What's going on YouTube? It's the Trolley Bully back with the part 2 of our shiny playthrough, and we've just arrived at Cantilever City after getting our 5th gym badge, and we are now battling our rival. So he leads with Staravia, we lead with Sparks, and we just hit it with a Thunderbolt, and we get the Oko. So that starts our dating back to part 1, that is now 9 Okos in a row on our rival's Pokemon. So he switches into Heracross. We then bring into Blue Flare, and we hit it with a Flamethrower. Now that does about 2/3 damage. He lowers our defense, we hit him with another Flamethrower, and he goes out. So sadly, our Oko streak is broken, but we still look to make quick work of our rival in this battle. He switches into Bazool, we switch into Sparks, we hit it with a Thunderbolt after it tail whips us, and it falls to an Oko. So once again, we get another Oko. He switches into Roselia, we switch back into Blue Flare, and we hit it with a Flamethrower, and it does get the Oko. So not bad. That's 13 out of 14 possible Okos. He's then going to bring in his starter, which is Monferno, and we will go into Rocky, and we'll just hit it with a Dig. After he hits us with a Mach Punch, does very minimal damage. We then burrow under the ground. His attack misses, we hit him, and we Oko. So very quickly defeated our rival, didn't even pose a threat. Then we head to the 6th gym. So this is a still type gym. We shouldn't have many issues with this gym with our current team comp. So he's going to lead out Bronzor, we're going to lead out Geico, and we're going to just Night Slash. And we almost get the one shot. We do end up getting a critical on that. He lives with about 10% HP left, so he's going to heal. We decided to switch into Blue Flare to get that type advantage out, and we're just going to hit him with a Flamethrower. And that does probably 2/3 damage. He actually uses a Trick Room, which can provide some problems for our team because most of our team is fast. So we do get the knockout there, but Trick Room could cost us here. So he leads Steelix, or goes into Steelix. We stay in. Unfortunately, we fall to a Earthquake, and then we switch in Rocky. So I tried to go into Rocky because I thought he might be slower than Steelix. Turns out that is not the case, and I just completely misplayed and for some reason used Dig, even though he just used Earthquake. I don't know why I did that. So we switch into Hulk here, go with a low sweep. Trick Room ended, so now we do outspeed. We lowered his speed again, hits us with the Gyro Ball, does minimal damage, and we knock him out with the low sweep. He then brings into a Bastiodon, which shouldn't provide much issue. We hit him with a low sweep, and his 30 unfortunately lets him live 1 HP. He does eat a berry to gain a little bit back, but we should be able to take him out with this next hit, no problem. So that's Byron goes down. So after defeating Byron, we go to leave the gym and we run into our rival. And he's like, "Oh, come follow me. We got to go to the library." So we followed him into the library and we head upstairs to see what the problem is. So he hurries us to the table, and now we find out that Pokemon evolve. Like, I don't know why they waited this late into the game to discuss that, because obviously our Pokemon have already evolved. But now we have to head to each of the lakes, and so all 3 of us are going to a different lake. So we arrive at ours, and we find Commander. And so it's the first time we've met Commander Jupiter, I believe. And we go into battle. She sends out a Kadabra. We start with Geico, and we just hit it with a Night Slash, which should take it out. And it does. One hit. We do get the crit, but I'm not sure that would have mattered. We likely would have got the kill regardless. So Rocky now learns Earthquake, which is a huge upgrade over Dig, and provides us a good stab ground move. And so we do send in Blue Flare as she brings in a Bronzor, and we hit it with a Flamethrower. It does live, but we do get the burn, and he uses Confuse Ray, and it does land. So I imagine, and we do hit ourselves in confusion. It uses extra sensory. The burn does a little bit of damage. We hit ourselves again in confusion and take the extra sensory, and the burn does knock it out. So we do hit ourselves twice, which is pretty unfortunate, but the burn does end up taking it out. We then switch into Nightmare as she switches into Toxic Rogue, and we do get pretty decent damage on it, but he does end up taking us out with Revenge, which is a very good play by him. We end up switching into Blue Flare and hit it with a Flamethrower, and that does take it out. So everyone's growing levels here. That's all for Commander Saturn. Oh, but now after that battle, Blue Flare does evolve, which is huge. So now we're get our first look at Rapidash, and that purple flame is amazing. That might be one of the best shiny sprites in the game. It looks so good. And so now we have to go to the other lake where Dawn is at and see what's going on here. So Rowan's here. We do defeat a couple grunts, and now we try to save Dawn from Commander Mars. So she leads with the Golbat. We lead with Geico. And we start off by switching into Rocky. He uses a U-turn, which does very little damage. He switches into Bronzor. We went for the Earthquake, but I forgot that it had Levitate, so that actually did no damage. It didn't hit him. So we decided to switch into Blue Flare here, and let's get our first look at in battle of Rapidash. And so we decide to hit it with a Flamethrower, and it leaves it in red health, so not quite enough to take it out. He does land a Confuse Ray, which is unfortunate. So hopefully we do land. And once again, we hit ourselves in confusion, and he hits us with a Gyro Ball. And then we do land a Flamethrower and end up taking the Bronzor out. So she's going to go into Perugly now, and we do decide to switch it to Rocky so that we can tank it. We hit it with an Earthquake after she hits us with a Growl, and we do about half damage, but she does have a Berry on to restore. Hits us with a Growl again. We just Earthquake, and we're just stalling each other out at this point. She does have a U-turn, and she switches into Golbat, and I used Earthquake, which does not affect it. Golbat now uses U-turn to switch back into Perugly. I use a Rock Tomb. Doesn't knock it out. Does lower the speed though. And now they are just spamming U-turn back and forth and just taking turns, taking damage, because they're not doing hardly any damage to me. So U-turns again. Goes out to Perugly. Perugly U-turns. And our Rock Tomb does connect, and we do take out the Golbat. So now we do not have to watch the U-turn spam any longer, as she sends out Perugly, and we just use Earthquake because she U-turns but has nowhere to go, and the Earthquake does knock her out. So after a stalled battle, we do end up coming out with W. So now, after saving Dawn at this lake, we now need to head to get our 7th gym badge. But we need to backtrack a little bit because I never got strength. So I had to come back to Salation Town, go into the Lost Tower, and pick up strength. So now we head to the 7th gym leader, which should not be an issue, the Ice Gym. And we face Candace. And so she leads with a Snover, and we lead with Blue Flare. So we just hit it with a Flamethrower, and it should go down in one hit, which it does. So easy battle there. So the hell does buffet us, do very little damage. She goes into a Sneasel. We do hit it with a Flamethrower, but it digs, and so we do not get to hit it. I decided to go switch into I decided not to switch in. I do take the dig and hit it with the Flamethrower, and it does take it out. So that was a pretty good decision to not switch in there. So it does. She is going to switch into Medicham, which will then switch into Nightwing and hit it with a Air Cutter. So it uses Ice Punch and does knock us out in one hit. So now we will send out Geico for some reason. I don't know why I made this decision after I just saw that she had Ice Punch, but we are able to luck up and get the Oko with Leaf Storm before she's able to get an attack off. So now we switch out Blue Flare as she sends in a Bomb of Snow, and we should be able to take it out with a single Flamethrower, which we do, and it was no problem. So now that we have defeated Candace, we now will head to our third lake to where our rival should be and see what is happening there. So now that we arrive at the lake, we do see Commander Jupiter and Barry talking as she runs away. And then Barry is like, there's mythical Pokemon, and now we have to save them. So we come back to Vilstone City because this Grunt has now dropped the storage key, which means we can now get into the Galactic Hideout. So we put in the storage key, unlock the door, and we find a Duskstone, which is actually pretty huge because now we can evolve Murkrow. So we do that. And now let's get our first look at Honchkrow. And it's beautiful. So Honchkrow, shiny, just looks amazing. So we head through the Galactic Headquarters until we find Cyrus, which I think it's funny how it just says boss. It doesn't actually say Cyrus, it just says boss. And so, even though we've actually fought him before. So he leads with a Murkrow, we lead with a Honchkrow. He does very minimal damage. We hit it with an Air Cutter, critical hit, and do take it out. So he's about to switch into Sneasel. We'll switch into Blue Flare. And we do try to use Flamethrower. We hit it, and we do knock it out in one hit. So no dig shenanigans this time, like we just faced with Candace. He's switching into Golbat. We'll switch into Sparks, and we should be able to take it out with a single Thunderbolt, which we do not. He hangs on with very, very little HP. He does use a potion, but it doesn't heal him enough, and we do take it out with another Thunderbolt. So now he's learning Thunder Wave, which I decided to not teach him because I didn't really feel like it was necessary, so I just kept his existing moveset. So now that we beat Cyrus, we need to head in deeper into their lab, their headquarters, and try to set free the Mythicals. So here we find the Commander Jupiter, or Saturn, and now we have to battle her. Yep, Commander Saturn. So she leads out a Kadabra, and we lead with Honchkrow, or Nightwing, and we decide to just use Air Cutter as she does switch into Toxicroak, so that looks like a genius move on our side as we switched into super effective move, leaves them with 10 HP, and we do knock him out the next turn. So now she's going to switch into Bronzor, which we'll decide to go into Blue Flare. We'll hit the Bronzor with a Flamethrower, or Flame Wheel, rather, leave it with about 5 HP. It does confuse us. Let's hope we get some good confusion luck, which we don't. We hit ourselves yet again. And the second turn, we do land our Flame Wheel, and it does go down. Now, last but not least, she has Kadabra, so we switch back into Honchkrow, and we should be able to just take it out. So we use Foul Play, but it does use Reflect, which will mitigate the damage Foul Play does. And so we now decide to use Air Cutter, as it uses a Rain Dance, and Air Cutter does crit and take it out. So down goes Commander Saturn. So now we will release the 3 mythical creatures as they just vanished in midair. So now we'll head up to where we see Dialga. And of course the boss and the other 2 commanders, other than the one that we just beat. And so here comes Dialga, busting on the scenes, and Cyrus, of course, is just wondering about how he can control it and use it for their own will. And then I'm like, okay, gotta put a stop to it. So 1v2, Barry comes up. It is now a 2v2. So we will be battling Commanders Mars and Jupiter. So they lead with 2 Bronzongs. I lead with Nightwing. I use Air Cutter, which does do very little damage even through the crit. He does use Reflect, which will reduce the amount of physical damage taken, so that does suck in that format. But we switch into Blue Flare here. He hits us with a Gyro Ball. Doesn't do much damage. Munchlax actually hits a pretty big bite. It does a lot of damage. We hit him, the one Bronzor, with a Flamethrower and do take him out, but the other one hits us with a Confuse Ray. So that's not good, as Rapidash loves to hit itself in Confusion, as it's shown in the past. So we decide to switch into Hulk here and hope to take out the Perugly. So it uses Body Slam, and Stun Tank uses Flamethrower. Munchlax actually hits decent damage, but Barry decides to switch into Infernape. We use Low Sweep and do take out Perugly in 1 hit. So Skuntank uses Flamethrower again, doesn't do much damage. The Reflect does wear off, which is pretty huge considering Hulk is a physical attacker. So Golbat uses Poison Fang, does get the poison, which is unfortunate. Our Low Sweep does get Skuntank into red health, but they do heal a little bit with a berry. Now we're both poisoned, so we're both taking poison damage, and Infernape uses Close Combat, which does take out Skuntank. He does take a little damage from the Aftermath, but not too bad. So Golbat attacks Infernape. We hit him with a Low Sweep since Skuntank was already dead. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but decent enough. We then decide to switch into Rocky here since they have 2 Golbats. But Infernape does do good damage to one and does take it out. So, but Golbat then does hit a crit on Infernape and finishes him off. So now Munchlax is out. We get hit with a Giga Drain, which does a lot of damage, but we do end up taking the Golbat out in 1 hit. And that is the end of the Commanders. So now, next up is Cyrus again. So let's see if we can repeat what we did last time, or does he get the best of us this time? So Dialga seems to be getting pretty mad. But here comes Uxie, Misprit, and Azelf. Let's just watch what happens here. And it came down and talked to me face to face. Now Cyrus is pissed off and wants to fight. So let's see what goes on. So he sends out his own Haunch Crow. I send out mine, the more fly looking one. So I hit him for decent damage. It does get him to about a 3rd HP left. Hit him again and it does take him out. So we know who has the better Haunch Crow. So I decided to switch into Sparks here as he switches into Gyarados. So I should be able to hit him and take him out with 1 Thunderbolt, which he actually ends up having a berry, which reduces electric moves. So he does live in red HP, but we do take him out with another Thunderbolt. So no big deal, just made us take a little bit extra damage. So we decided to switch into Blue Flare here as he switches into a Weavile. So it does decide to use Dig this time. We miss. We decide to see if we can tank it, which we do again. We hit him with a Flamethrower. He tanks it, leaves him on red, but we do get the burn, which is pretty significant considering Weavile is a physical attacker and burn reduces his attack. So he does use a potion, which is another thing. I don't know why they're still using like super potions this late in the game. I feel like they could have made the game a little bit more difficult by just letting them use the full restores or hyper potions that we're used to. Because super potions at this point in the game, when you're level high 40s and 50s, it really doesn't do much. Nonetheless, Crobat uses a U-turn, does little damage. We hit him with a Rock Tomb. It does pretty good damage, leaves him with about 10 HP left. He then avoids the Rock Slide the next turn. We come back and hit it, and he does go down. And so Rocky is trying to learn Double Edge, which I do teach him over Explosion. since he does not take recoil damage, and Cyrus does go down. So after that, we do take on Dialga, which we do not catch because unfortunately he is not a shiny Pokemon, therefore we cannot catch it. So we just take it down with an Earthquake, and that's that. Legendary Pokemon getting taken out by a lonely Golem. So Dialga has returned and things seem to have calmed down. And so since things have calmed down, we will head to the... Once arriving, we do meet Flint. And he's like, hey, the gym leader is not here. Can you go meet him? Which we do in the lighthouse. And so he just sees that we're challenging him and he's like, all right, cool. I'm the toughest. Good luck. So we do head over to the gym. Flint is excited and blocking the door, but after a conversation he does leave. And now we go into the last, final, and 8th gym battle against Volkner. So this is the electric gym. Should not be too hard. He leads with a Raichu. We leave with Rocky. We go into a Earthquake, but it uses Surf and does end up taking us out in one hit. That's the famous surfing Pikachu. So we decide to switch into Geico now and just hit him with a Giga Drain. And that does a modest 2/3 damage. He does get us with the Paralyze. And he does use Volt Switch and switches into Apom or Empapom. So since we're paralyzed, I decided to switch into Hulk so that we can get a type advantage. So it uses Fake Out, not that it mattered because that was a switch in turn. And we hit it with a low sweep. It does have a berry that reaches, weakens fighting moves, so he does end up living, but we take it out the next turn. So he switches back into Raichu, and we try to hit it with a low sweep, but he does get Surf off. We do live with 1 HP and take out the Raichu. So how do you guys feel about the loving and friendship in this game, the whole living on 1 HP just because thing? I mean, I think it's okay, but I kind of wish it wasn't in the battle. It makes it too easy, in my opinion. So he leads into Artillery. We hit it with an Air Cutter. We do decent damage. He does restore health. We hit it with another Air Cutter. Gets it about 2/3, and we finish it off with a 3rd. So he's going to send in a Luxray of his own. We decide to go into Blue Flare, and I'm not sure what he plans to do, but he intimidates us, so we decide to use a special attacking move, and Flamethrower doesn't even get him to half. We hit him with another one though, and I guess we just got a lucky damage roll because it wasn't a crit, but it does end up taking it out. So not sure how, but I'm not going to complain. And so after beating Volkner, we are good to head to the Pokemon League, which we do. We head through, and right before we're about to go in, who comes out of nowhere? None other than Barry. I guess he wants to get beat one last time. So he leads with his bird, I lead with mine, the cooler looking one of the two. So he uses U-turn, which I figured he would do, so I went with a Air Cutter, and he does bring in a Heracross, which was a lucky prediction, and we do get the Oko. So he's going to go into Floatzel. I decide to stay in and just use Air Cutter. He Ice Fangs. We live barely, but he does get the freeze. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I decided just to sack him and switch into Sparks. So we're just going to hit him with a Thunderbolt. His Crunch does no damage, and he does get OK'd by the Thunderbolt. So he's going to go back into Staraptor. We're going to stay in and just hit him with a Thunderbolt. He uses Close Combat. Doesn't even get us to half. And he does go down, but he hangs on using a Focus Sash. So he does hit us with another Close Combat. We are able to live, and we do take it out the next turn. So at least, I guess he got tired of us OK'ing all of his Pokemon, so we gave one a Focus Sash. So he's going to go into Infernape. We're going to come out with Rocky here, and let's see if we're still strong enough to tank some of his fighting moves. So he uses a Close Combat, and we do live even through the Close Combat. We hit him with an Earthquake, and we do knock it out in one hit. So that should be the this should be the final Pokemon as he goes into a Rose Raid. We go into a blue flare, and we hit him with a flamethrower and knock it out in one hit, and that's that. So we faced it 4 times. We had over 20 Okos. You're not very good. So he goes into Snorlax, we go into Hulk, we hit him with a low sweep. He lives on 1 HP. Uses Yawn to try to put us to sleep, which doesn't really do anything, as we're just going to take him out with a low sweep. So we're not even falling asleep because the battle is now over. So Barry has once again been defeated. So now we're just going to heal up and then head into the Pokemon League. So up first is Aaron, the bug trainer. So let's see how we do in the Elite Four. He leads with the Dustox. We lead into Nightwing, and we hit him with an Air Cutter, which we do land the crit. It's super effective, but he does live on 1 HP. Hits us with a Bug Buzz. Doesn't do a crazy amount of damage, but he goes into a full restore. We hit an Air Cutter, but he does dodge it, and then we hit an Air Cutter the next turn, and he does go down in 1 hit. So he decides to go into Heracross, which we hit another Air Cutter. He hits us with a Rock Slide. Does a good amount of damage. We barely hang on, and we do knock him out. So he goes into Beautifly. We try to Air Cutter, but he outspeeds and does knock us out with a Shadow Ball. So now we switch into Blue Flare, hit him with a Flamethrower, and Beautifly does go down. We get the lucky crit. Not sure if that mattered, but we do get it. They go into Vespiquen. We hit him with a Flamethrower. We get him under half, but it does have a berry that puts it back in green HP. We go for a Fire Blast, get lucky, it connects, and we do knock it out. So he's going to go into a Drapion, which we then hit with a Flamethrower, but his Earthquake sadly knocks us out before we ever do any damage to him. So now we're going to bring in Hulk. We're going to hit him with a low sweep. After he hits us with a Cross Poison, he gets the lucky crit. Our low sweep does very minimal damage, and so we decide to use Knockoff, which we did knock off the Scope Lens, so his crits will not land as prevalent, and he does knock us out. So we go into Sparks here, and we decide just to use Thunderbolt, and we do take it out, landing a crit. So that is all for Elite Four Aaron. Now, next up is going to be Elite Four Bertha, the ground type. So let's see how our team stacks up against the ground type. So she's going to lead with a Quagsire. Quag. So we go into Geico, and we're just going to hit it with a Giga Drain and knock it out in 1 hit. And so she decides to go into Wish Cash, which I'm just going to leave in. She decides to go into Wish Cash, which I'm just going to Giga Drain. It does have a berry that reduces the power of grass type moves, so he does live on 1 HP. However, his attack does very minimal damage, but he does lower our speed, which could come back to hurt us. So we do get the Oko the second time around against Wish Cash, and she decides to bring in Swoodowoodoo. So we decide to Giga Drain it, and we do get the lucky Oko. So she's going to now bring in Golem, and you probably know the picture by now, but we're just going to Giga Drain. It does live on 1 HP due to Sturdy. Heavy slams us, doesn't do a lot of damage. She decides to use a full restore, so we just go into Giga Drain again. Sturdy saves his life again, but we heal almost our entire HP. And now this next turn, we will just finish her off with Night Slash, which got a crit. Didn't need it, obviously, but we still got it. So she's now going to go into a Hippowdon, which you probably know by now. We're just going to hit Leaf Storm and knock it out in 1 hit. So we use Leaf Storm there just to try to save some PP in our Giga Drain. And Bertha goes down. And now next up is Flint. So Flint uses the Fire type Pokemon, which we really don't have a crazy counter for. So we decided just to lead with Rocky here and see what damage an Earthquake can do. And we use Earthquake, and it does put us to sleep, which is very unfortunate. So We're fast asleep. I decided just to go ahead and use an awakening versus trying to just live and wake up on our own. So he does hit hypnosis and it does put us to sleep yet again. I swear these people have perfect accuracy on hypnosis during this playthrough. So we do eat a berry, restore 10 HP. We do try to go for Earthquake, and he knocks us out with Iron Tail. So we didn't even get a single move off with what I thought was going to be our best Pokemon for this gym. So we decided to go into Honchkrow, use an Air Cutter. He does use Iron Tail, doesn't kill. We use the Air Cutter, gets it down to half HP. He does withdraw Rapidash and brings in a Steelix, which our Air Cutter almost brings to half, but not quite. And so I decided to switch into Hulk and try to hit him with a low sweep. So he Iron Tails, we barely live. Our low sweep barely doesn't kill. He uses Iron Tail, leaves us on 1 HP due to the friendship, and I decided to use a max potion because I knew he was going to full restore, so I felt like it was fair if we both did it at the same time. So I hit a low sweep, got him barely under half. He leaves us with 17 HP. We hit another low sweep, and he does go out. So Hulk barely tanked this one out. I decided just to use another max potion. And Lopunny quick attacks. I decided to use a low sweep, and we do knock it out in one hit. After debating it, I did not teach it to him. So he's going into Rapidash. I decided just to hang in and see if I can do anything. He just does put us to sleep, just like he did to Golem. Iron Tail doesn't do a crazy amount of damage, but we're asleep, so we can't really do anything. So I decided just to full restore to heal the HP in the sleep. So he Iron Tails. I decided to low sweep, and we do take him out, but we get burned, which is not good for us considering we are a physical attacker, and it lowers our attack. So he goes into Drift Bloom. I decided to bring into Spark. I decided to go into Sparks, and I actually use Crunch because it's super effective. Unfortunately, we did get burned the same turn, so it halved our attack. So second turn, he goes into Minimize. We just use a Thunderbolt. It does get lucky and connect. However, he does live and heal some back with a Citrus Berry. So I'm just going to keep using Thunderbolt as he keeps using Minimize. Fingers are crossed, and it does not hit. So he decides to use Baton Pass and go into Infernape, which I hit with a Thunderbolt. It does hit, but doesn't do a crazy amount of damage. His close combat leaves us on low yellow. We hit again, get him into red, and use a full restore. So he Mach Punches to go first. Doesn't do a lot of damage. He close combats. We live on 22 damage. We use a Thunderbolt, and we are able to knock it out with a Thunderbolt. So he brings Drift Bloom back in. I decide to just go for a Thunderbolt because he minimized yet again, and it does connect even through Minimize, and he came up clutch, and we are able to defeat Flint. So up next, last but not least, is Lucian. And I gotta say, this one was kind of difficult, more difficult than I remember it being. This one was kind of difficult, more difficult than I remember it being. At early, we lead it with Nightwing. He leads out with Mr. Mime. I decided to go with Air Cutter, but then he uses Reflect. Air Cutter doesn't even get to half, even though it crits. He uses Dazzling Gleam and does knock me out in one hit. So we go into Blue Flare here, and I decide to just Smart Strike because it is super effective. However, it doesn't do a lot of damage because of the Reflect, and so then I just Flamethrower it and try to work it down. It's getting off a lot of damage on me. I figured he would full restore, so I went ahead and max potioned, which he does full restore, and now we're both at 100 HP, 100% HP. So I use Flamethrower. I do about 1/4 damage. He then uses Light Screen, which this man is just the stalling king. That's all he's made for. It's just to stall out the game, and he's doing it very successfully. So I see the Reflect wore off. I decided to use Smart Strike. It does leave him on 1 HP, and then Blue Flare lives on 1 HP. So this was a very, very even back and forth battle. Fortunately for us, Blue Flare does come out on top with 1 HP left. So I decided to go into Sparks here, as he goes into Medicham, and I'm just going to get off a Thunderbolt, and it does barely any damage, and we actually are able to dodge an attack, and I hit him with a Crunch, and it does. So next up is Alakazam, and I decide to try to just Crunch, and it does knock him out. However, he did use Future Sight, which is going to come back and hit one of our Pokemon in the future. But now he goes in to a Girafarig. We hit a Crunch. We get him down to a lower yellow, but this is where it gets crazy. He uses Trick Room. We do use Crunch to take out Girafarig. However, he's now going to come into a Bronzong after I take the Future Sight attack. So Sparks does go down, and he's going to lead in with Bronzong. I'm going to go in with Rocky. So stupidly, I went with Rocky, even though I knew it was our only chance to try and go first through the Trick Room. Still didn't happen. Our move missed, and he knocked us out. So I go into Hulk, even though I'm going to move second, and try to hit him with a low sweep. He Earthquakes. We're able to tank that very well. Unfortunately, it doesn't do a crazy amount of damage, but now the Trick Room is over, and so we do go first. We get him into below half, hits us with the Gyro Ball, and we faint. So the only Pokemon we have left is Geico versus his Bronzong, and we hit it with a Night Slash. It tanks it, barely lives, and it knocks us out. But we have Blue Flare on 1 HP. So I just decided to go ahead and revive somebody just to be safe. He uses a full restore, and then I go ahead and Flamethrower it down below half. It does set up a Trick Room again, and so I just go ahead and revive somebody else. He uses an Earthquake, and he does knock us out. However, we do tough it out, which is fine, but in this instance, it's just so cheesy, man. I was already at 1 HP, and then it lives on 1 HP. Like, how is that even possible? So I just don't like that. So we go into Hulk. He does Earthquake us. We do use Knockoff, and we do knock it out. So we defeated Lucian after a very hard fought battle, and now is Cynthia. So here's how Cynthia went. Rocky faint, Hulk faint, Rapidash faint. So as you can see, it went pretty well our first try. Nightwing faint, 1 shot, Sparks faint, and Geico faints from a 1 shot. So hopefully attempt number 2 goes better. Here is attempt number 2. Rocky faints, Sparks faints, Rapidash faints, Hulk faints, Nightwing faints, Geico faints. So lucky number 3, am I right? So let's see what attempt number 3 has for store. So I just kept restarting from the same spot, so all my Pokemon are the same level. So I did not get the advantage of getting the XP and battling back through. So I knew I could beat it at this level, so I just kept trying. And here is our 3rd attempt. So I decided to leave off with Sparks this time and use a Crunch. It does lower the defense, which is exactly what I was hoping to do. So he leaves us barely under half HP. I decided to now use a Volt Switch. I activate his Berry, which gets him back to half. But we now switch into... So after he's taken a little bit of damage and I'm at full HP, he does hit a very strong Shadow Ball, leaving us with 71 HP left. I decided to go into an Earthquake, and I do get a lucky damage roll and take him out. So that was a very lucky damage roll. It could have went either way. And so Blue Flare is now learning Fire Blast, which I do teach it. And I decided to go into Blue Flare as she brings out Roselia. So I know Flamethrower doesn't OHKO. It leaves it barely 1. So I decided to go with the Flare Blitz. It does hit and knocks out Roserade. And I do end up living with 5 HP after the recoil, which was very calculated. So it goes into Gastrodon. We go into Geico, and we just hit it with... We actually used a Super Potion, which was a mistake on my part. I did not mean to just use a Super Potion. I meant to use, obviously, a full restore, but that's a mistake by me because I knew I could tank the shots, and then I knew I would just be able to heal it up with Giga Drain. So there we go. We OHKO it, and now heal our entire health bar back. So I used those 2 turns as free turns, and now going into Melodic full HP. So she goes into Melodic. We decide to bring out Sparks and see what kind of damage we can do. So I decide to use Thunderbolt, and we do just over half damage. It uses Scald and does about the same. So she does get burned due to her Flame Orb, and we hit a Thunderbolt, and it does take her out. So far so good this turn, as we're getting off to the best start that we have so far. So in comes Lucario, which has given us trouble the past few runs. However, I think we'll be able to take him out. So we go for a low sweep, he goes for a Flash Cannon. We do eat it decently well, and we are able to OHKO it with a lucky low sweep damage roll. Because I've played it a couple times. Sometimes it'll OHKO, sometimes it leaves them with 1 or 2 HP. That time we got the lucky OHKO. And now here comes Garchomp. So with Garchomp versus Geico, he does one-shot us, unfortunately. That was a miscalculation on my part. And so I decided to just go into Rocky and see what kind of damage we can get off. As kind of like a sacrifice, I use a full restore to make sure my other guys are fully healed, as Rocky does his job being a sacrifice. In comes Hulk, which I'm going to just low sweep. So my plan was to try to get off damage while also lowering his speed, so that way I could go first. Because if you didn't know, he does have perfect IVs and speed. EVs and IVs and speed, so he is very fast. So I was trying to use low sweep to sort of lower his speed, so the rest of my Pokemon would have a chance. So Hulk goes down, and we decided to bring in Rocky yet again. So we bring him in as a sacrifice just to max revive Hulk, and Rocky does go down. But once again, he has done his job as the sacrifice, and here comes Hulk, and we're just gonna low sweep him again as he earthquakes. We do live with 43 HP. We get the second stage lowered of the speed. Now let's see if we go first. So we low sweep. We do now go first, as I am able to knock him out, as Hulk does go down due to the rough skin, and Garchomp actually does live on 1 HP. And we use Crunch after her full restore. We do a decent damage. We do take some damage in return, which I knew was going to happen, but at this point I'm just trying to get off as much damage as possible. So we bring in Blue Flare here, as Garchomp is weaker and now is hurting with the speed drop. So we decide to revive Hulk, and he should have OHKO'd us with Earthquake. However, he does hang on, which is pretty clutch, as it lets us revive and heal Hulk. So Blue Flare goes down. He's the sacrifice that we needed, so he clutched up, and we decided to go into Nightwing there just to see if we can get off any more damage. So we do use Night Slash and actually crit, and it does take him out. So we didn't even need to revive Hulk, but we did, and there you have it. We are the champion. So this is my first ever full shiny playthrough, and I'm glad I got to document it and put it out there on YouTube. And I cannot wait to see this screen right here about our champion status and see all the shiny sprites right next to each other. And there it is. It's loading us in, and we are in the Hall of Fame. As you can see, Sparks, Rocky, Geico, Hulk, Blue Flare, Nightwing, and now just how cool does that picture look? I hope you enjoy this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want more stuff like this.